Rocket League serious moments. Oh yeah, by Shadow R. This is a new YouTuber that has very little subscribers, but he's doing very, very, very well. Let's check out what he's got to say.
From teenage players robbed at a tournament to several pros banned over one huge mistake. These are 8 of Rocket League's most serious moments.
See, he's really good. You guys should check him out.
Starting with these North American college players with the questionable plan of traveling to South Africa for easy prize money while on vacation. With SSA being a weaker, newly established region, and Wondermike, Lunar, and C-Money being more experienced North American talent, they could reasonably do some serious damage in the region. So when Lunar shared their plans on
Yeah, I heard about this. I remember this for sure.
Twitter looking for an organization to represent for their month-long stay, this didn't sit well with the community. This is probably one of the worst ways you could go about playing in another region.
Yeah.
Insanely cringe. I sincerely hope they fail miserably. The relocation would pose a unique predicament for the region due to the power issues with frequent load shedding in South Africa. Here, the national power utility uses routine partial shutdowns to relieve stress on the grid as a whole. Consequently, this affects the esports scene with
Sub jumbo mumbo gumbo
regularly and has even led to forfeits from teams having no power. The concern is that the college team moving here is quite problematic for the players who have been dealing with these issues throughout their careers, especially with the little amount this team would actually gain by playing here. Each player would be there for a blue tag and a maximum of $2,000 per regional, which they would split with an org. Not to mention while disrupting the region's rankings and affecting teams' chances at making worlds. I like Wanda, but this ain't it.
That's
SSA
crazy.
Teams have enough roadblocks in their paths, this feels wrong. What made it worse was that, despite the disapproval, they seemed to double down, getting into it with the region and its pro players.
Wow.
As a result, the backlash intensified and some individuals resorted to sending the players threats, and ultimately they decided not to go. Now let's talk about the several notable players that were
Thank you for the
permanently banned
sub.
right before their most important tournament.
Cushion
over an
sofa.
item. The RLCS qualifiers, being the most important tournament for any semi-pro player, was just around the corner. But unexpectedly, a massive wave of bans went out, hitting multiple notable players. The reason for this ban, an illegal alpha boost.
What?
See, this valuable boost is easily the most popular item in the scene.
How?
But to acquire it legitimately, one would need to pay the hefty price tag of $5,000. But players resorted to
Really? That's how much it
means of
costs, but
obtaining it,
not anymore.
a fake, exploited version of the item. There was a community member who managed to deceive the support team into granting this item multiple times to different accounts, and they subsequently sold these accounts with this untradeable boost at a much cheaper price to numerous people, including these high-profile players. When Psyonix caught wind of the situation, all players that were found with this illicit alpha boost in their accounts received permanent bans.
No.
This situation left these players and their teammates uncertain about the upcoming qualifiers. With the roster lock deadline approaching and no clarification provided, it seemed like the bans were not going to be reverted. This caused a ton of panic, and the community thought an indefinite ban was huge overkill compared to other esports bans in the past. But this wasn't an esports ban. It was strictly through the game's cheating system, subjected to any casual player who violates the rules. But for this very unique
They cheated
case,
the system.
eventually a statement was released unbanning the players and extending the roster lock, along with a warning not to participate in these actions again. This could have been real bad had they not been so understanding and truly saved these players from an early retirement. For the most recent development on this list, we have the leaked insider info of FaZe Clan's team dynamic. Now, Firstkiller is known as one of the best players in the game, but not so much as the best teammate off the pitch. He's developed the reputation for controlling the direction of his teams and kicking teammates, some would say preemptively. But
Wow.
this wasn't exclusive to just players, as it would be announced that FaZe's coach Roldiz would be removed from the team right before the World Championships. Shortly after, Roldiz released a video titled "I Got Dropped." And this video will go down as having some of the most in-depth inside information of a team we've ever seen given to the
First
public.
killer kicked
Miz
him.
wasn't on the game. Sip didn't want to play the game, specifically for Reciprocal. He has expressed to me that he's not sure if he wants to continue his career in the game. It's frustrating to know that you care more than the player. The mentality. XB was the previous coach and left because he said they were uncoachable.
Roldiz would go live on stream to address his chat, but Firstkiller and Miss had their own views to express. First Killer said that he was just milking the situation, and Miss brought up his own points that the team
Uncoachable.
having low hours has been an ongoing issue, but that Roldis would tilt more than any of the players after a loss and distance himself from the team, supposedly muting and not coaching the team during practice. After some time, Roldis received a call on stream and would take down the video shortly after publishing it. When FaZe would lose at the World Championships without Roldis 1 week later, it was safe to say he took this moment personally.
We smoking on that FaZe pack tonight, boys!
What happened?
For another situation of a player
No
receiving
way.
threats with the absurd reason that he played the game well. Calm from V1 is known for his demo-heavy playstyle and became the villain of the esport when he would be extremely vocal and not afraid to get loud to his opponents at majors.
Yeah, I've had like professional lobbies. Oh
Oh my.
He earned himself the role of one of the most hated pros with the European crowd, but he didn't mind playing the character and fed into it. But later, when V1 would play the fan favorites of NRG, some people took it way too far. And well, when you combine his role in agitating demo plays with a fan base that can be lethal to their own team when they underperform, this
Wow.
wasn't going to mix well.
Yeah, I remember
NRG
this.
were already in a tough slump for quite some time, and they finally started to perform, making the semifinals of the NA Fall Cup. Well, this didn't last long when they played V1, and Calm didn't even remotely hold back on the demos.
Talked about Yan and Fury, but Fury is a team that gets demoed all the time, and they still manage. But that was a wide open opportunity created by Calm, and now another chance. Calm's demo clears the path.
He's just demoing. Look at how pissed off Squishy is.
10 on the demo. That must be 10 in this game.
It was 4 minutes into
Demo.
Back around the same.
Demo.
More demos coming out from Calm.
Demo.
Beast Mode joining the party.
He is invasive and infuriating, and he is everywhere, and he is ruining the day of NRG.
Torment, reminding everybody to watch out. Now Beast Mode will drop it in.
V1 obliterated NRG, not only taking the series 4-1, but Calm set the NA record of the most demos in a single game with a staggering 20 demos.
Really?
Unlike previous years, pros have learned that demos are all a part of the game and you just have to learn to play around it. But the fans, not so much. They sent threats to Calm and took the situation way too far, all because of his performance that led his team to a regional win. A lot of the community did defend him though, and while it's easy to say demos are skillless when tilted, that of course just isn't the case. Now, for a serious topic that goes under the radar are some of the injuries surrounding competitive play. Not just immediate accidents like Sizz re-breaking his toe in a foot race, or when players fall out of chairs or off the stage, but also long-term injuries that come with competing in esports. For both pros and casual players, some of the most common gaming-related injuries are wrist pain, back and neck pain,
Yeah.
and mental fatigue and stress. It shouldn't come as a surprise that many long-lasting injuries like carpal tunnel and tendonitis are prevalent in the space, especially when pros are sitting at their computers for hours and hours every day. For instance, the two-time world champion Violet Panda shared his experience after developing tendonitis in both of his thumbs from the strain of competing.
I couldn't practice outside. Like whenever I had scrims, I was on painkillers. Like it was that bad. Like it just sucked playing. Like it hurt. You know, I fell behind the mechanics. I could tell, but I couldn't really do much about it.
This inevitably took a toll on his career, playing a part in his retirement a year later. We've seen injuries impact players'
Whoa, I
careers,
didn't know
like
about
Rise
that.
breaking his wrist outside of competing in his free time, where he had to play RLCS with a hairline fracture.
And I told them I don't want like a full arm cast because I need to be able to play this weekend. And then she goes, you can't play video games and you have to keep your arm elevated. And then I was like, okay, so...
Okay, that's an
why can't I
actual
play?
injury, though. He
And she was
fell.
saying, if you have your hand, your wrist below your elbow, you could have serious nerve damage.
Some esports teams even hire strength and conditioning coaches to help mitigate this risk. But fortunately, we haven't yet dealt with the same life-threatening injuries compared to traditional sports. Next, we have the topic of North American teams being paid more than Europe despite being the weaker region. It's no bold statement to say Europe has been the better major region in recent years. And with no discrepancy in viewership, the question arises as to why their salaries are less. A community member posted this tweet that sparked some debate on the topic. EU has significantly higher viewership, better talent, and even better storylines, ranging from low-tier bubble players all the way to the highest level. And still, NA will receive more sponsorships, higher salaries, and better treatment. To back this up, NA pro player Reddles also mentioned in 2022 that NA teams outside of the top 12 were making more than some of the best teams in EU. RLCS World Champion Garrett G brought up on the topic of better talent that EU having revolving top teams and constant changes can actually hurt their salary growth potential, with high salaries in NA coming from teams re-signing with the same organizations. Another answer is the widespread English in the US, making it much easier to market, and that NA players in general create more content and grow their personal brands, building more bargaining power. Garrett did mention that the exception for Europe would be the French player and streamer K-Dop, who can take a lot of credit for the entire region being so huge. But this isn't just a Rocket League situation. There is a similar case across a ton of other esports as well. Even with objectively worse gameplay and the same metrics, NA will earn significantly more in general. For this reason, along with no current import regulations, we could definitely see more players move across the pond like Gen G as the esport grows. Now let's talk about the time Scrub Killa up and left his team in the middle of an RLCS season over a headset. In RLCS Season 9, Scrub was on Mouse Sports with Speed and Cooksir. They had a 4-3 record in league play with 2 games left in the regular season. But suddenly, Scrub would leave the team, seemingly because his contract forced him to use a sponsored headset rather than the one he preferred, and the org supposedly threatened to fine Scrub for breaching the contract if he continued. But it turns out it wasn't just over a headset. Scrub had issues with the contract terms in general, as his previous team Vitality hired him as a self-employed worker, and for Mouse, he was a contractor, which made him feel like he had much less freedom.
I find that the fines in the contract are very, very unreasonable. I don't want to be a slave to something. I want to have that freedom, and that matters more to me.
Scrub had concerns about the contract from the start, but signed it anyway since he was under pressure. Not signing to a team meant he would be left with no RLCS spot for a full season, and this was before the open circuit era where anyone could qualify to the Pro League. This meant the former world champion would be out of the RLCS for around 6 months. Ultimately, Mouse would grant his release after their 7th match, leaving quite the surprise for their unsuspecting substitute player Arju. But they would actually do very well with him. Mouse won their last 2 games of the season, and the unproven sub earned himself a player of the day, fortunately ending the season fairly well despite the altercation. Speaking of which, for the most serious moment covered in this video is when the young team Liquid was robbed at an RLCS tournament. In 2022, the Spring Major was held in London at the Copper Box Arena, a venue that has held the World Championships in the past and created one of the greatest moments in the game. But this moment was definitely far from that. Ato would post in a now deleted tweet saying they were all okay, but the team was robbed by a group of 12 people. They took their coach Expert's phone and wallet and Oski's AirPods before running away. The community was of course shocked by the news, but glad they were okay. This is awful news. No one should be getting robbed at an event like this of all the actual pros that come here to put on a show. This is of course a serious situation regardless, but what made it worse was the fact that Team Liquid were just kids. This team is the youngest to ever play in RLCS due to a rule exception. Liquid was allowed to play in a European regional just before Ato and Oski would turn 15, the minimum required age to compete, making for the youngest team to ever legitimately play in RLCS. Liquid qualifying for this major also meant that this happened to them at their first RLCS LAN. A Redditor pointed out that this wasn't so surprising given the youth crime in East London. With the RLCS being an international circuit, players will likely end up competing in a place completely unfamiliar to them. This goes for both them and the fans, so always remember to do your due diligence when traveling to new places and stay safe. If you're interested in 10 controversial moments in Rocket League history, be sure to check out this video here.